And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Well, no big storms on the board here to look at. We've got a weak system bringing wet conditions into the central Aleutians tonight. Otherwise, the eastern and northern Bering Sea, light winds and dry, extending into the interior here. Still some areas of light snow and snow showers with diminishing winds up here to the north, diminishing winds for the west coast and Alaska Peninsula. Showers continue southeast interior, and with a weak system here, keeping it cloudy and occasionally wet over the southern panhandle. And for tomorrow, look for cloudy skies and showery conditions with highs in the 50s for the southeast coast. A lot of showers into the southeast interior, scattered showers into Kenai Peninsula, south central Alaska to the Alaska Range. Another nice day back out to the west. Diminishing snow up here to the northwest. This weak system here spreading rain into the eastern Aleutians, and that slow moving low kind of keeps that in place there through Tuesday for the Fox Islands, spreading into the Alaska Peninsula and then drying out behind it toward high pressure. Northern Bering Sea staying dry with light winds. Sunshine breaking out over the northwest part of the state here as conditions improve with warming temperatures. A trough here on the east side keeps showers going here north of the Alaska Range. More widespread showers to just outright rain here over the Copper River Basin down to the North Gulf Coast. And a very weak low keeps a chance of showers over the southern panhandle with scattered showers up to the north. Coastal water forecasts south coast tomorrow. Southeast winds 20 knots, south to southeast 10 to 15 knots on the central coast. Pretty light winds in store for the north coast, direction out of the east at 10 knots. And for Lynn Canal, north or south winds at 15 knots, southeast at 15 for Stevens Passage, Clarence Strait, southeast winds 20 knots with 4-foot seas. Outlook for Tuesday here up on the north coast, light variable winds at about 5 to 10 knots. Variable winds 10 knots on the central coast, and the southern coast, east-southeast winds 15 knots with 6-foot seas. Clarence Strait, southeast at 15. Southeast winds 10 knots for Stevens Passage and Lynn Canal. Prince William Sound, southeast winds 10 knots with slight seas. South 10-knot winds in the forecast here for the North Gulf Coast and the Barren Islands for Monday. Southwest 10 for Kamishak Bay. Cook Inlet, south at 15. And for Tuesday, Cook Inlet, south to southwest wind 10 to 15 knots with 2 to 4-foot seas. Picking the winds up a little bit here out of the southeast to 20 knots for the Barren Islands and Kamishak Bay. Light variable winds for the North Gulf Coast. Southeast at 10 for Prince William Sound. Kodiak Island, variable winds at 10 knots here on the east side of the island tomorrow, but southwest 20 in Shelikof Strait. And variable to north to northwest winds at 10 to 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula. Southwesterlies at 20 for Bristol Bay. Small craft advisories for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. Southeast winds 25 knots, southeast to 20 knots for the Alaska Peninsula, and variable to southeast winds 10 to 15 knots for Kodiak Island. Eastern Aleutians, small craft advisories tomorrow for southeast winds 25 to 30 knots, and for the central Aleutians, west to southwest winds 25 knots, 20-knot winds out of the west and southwest for the western Aleutians. And then for the day on Tuesday, eastern Aleutians here, south to west winds of 15 to 20 knots, northwest at 20 for Adak and Atka. Variable winds 15 to 20 knots for the western Aleutians. And for the southwest coast here tomorrow, north winds 10 to 15 knots, north at 15 for St. Lawrence Island. Small craft advisories over Norton Sound, west winds 25 knots, seas to 4 feet, light variable winds for the Pribilofs, and northeast of 15 for the northern Bering Sea. Tuesday, St. Matthew Island, northeast at 20 knots, north at 10 for Norton Sound, northeast 15 St. Lawrence Island and the Yukon Delta coast, as well as the Pribilofs, Kuskokwim Delta coast, southeast at 20. Eastern Boulevard Sea coast tomorrow, east winds 15 to 20 knots, northeast at 20 knots for the central Arctic coast, and small craft advisories for the western Arctic coast, northeast winds 25 knots, and variable winds for the Chukchi Sea at 20 to 25 knots. And then those winds really drop off on Tuesday. South winds 5 to 10 knots for the Chukchi Sea, And western Arctic coast, east to southeast winds of 5 to 10 knots. Central coast, light east winds of 5 knots. And light variable winds for the eastern Beaufort Sea coast.